And we're live.
Hello, and welcome to Soare's Lifestyle Series 2020, episode 26. Thank you for joining our group and growing our community. Please say hello to us in the comment section to let us know that you are here. And also use the comment section for comments and questions for our guest speaker. The purpose of our group is to share valuable information in featured weekly segments with professionals in their respective fields around lifestyles, relationships, and entertaining. I am Rosemary Skinner. I am a professional event and wedding planner and event designer and the owner of Soiree Event Extraordinaire. My host, Crystal Cotto Sullivan, connector and coach counselor, John Sullivan Counseling, Cynthia Ballard, marketing professional of CB Marketing and also a Reiki master. Today's episode 26, we are pleased to have with us our guest speaker, Lori Labute. Lori is a parenting coach and is the owner of Keep Calm and Parent On. She was born and raised in Windsor, the youngest of six children in a large French Canadian family. She studied psychology at the Carleton University in Ottawa before completing her Bachelor of Education in Windsor, and in 2008 to 2020 accredited in positive parenting instruction. She has worked in various capacities with children and their parents for over 33 years. Her experience includes working as an elementary school teacher, an education assistant teacher, an EA in special education setting, children's mental health worker, anxiety, depression coping skills coach, delivering parenting seminars, and currently direct one-to-one parent support and coaching. Lori has a great love of the outdoors, gardening, cycling, and just about any sport that she can play or watch. Her passion is empowering parents to feel confident in their parenting skills while fostering healthy family relationships. Welcome, Lori, to the show.
Thank you for
Lori,
having
thank you for joining us. And Lori, we wanted to open up the show by asking you if you could address the challenges that parents and children are facing due to the current COVID situation and pandemic. Over to you.
Okay. Wow. As if we needed something to further complicate parenting and make it more difficult, right? Um, so, yeah, it's you'll often hear it said that we don't get a manual when our kids are born, and they don't hand us one. And certainly, I always say that if you had a manual, you'd need a manual for the manual, then you'd need the updates. And I think now we need a COVID manual with respect to parenting. So, in addition to all of the stressors parents are going under, whether during COVID, we all are, um, financial, it can be financial, emotional, the anxiety that parents are feeling. Um, Layer on top of that, having to help our kids navigate through this as well. Um, so, I think a lot of the feedback I'm getting from parents is it's just a lot. There's just so much. They're overwhelmed sometimes with the online schooling, lack of outside interest for their kids. They can't take them to their regular activities, although some of those are starting up. So one of the things that parents have said is like, how do I help my kids with the uncertainty? And it's a really difficult question because the answer is help them deal with uncertainty. Help them to become comfortable with it. Sometimes we don't know the outcome, and we just have to kind of do the best that we can. Um, One of the things I am seeing, or talking to parents about, is what there are lots of things we can't do during this pandemic, but there are lots of things that we can do. We can teach kids some resilience. We can pivot and teach them that sometimes things are outside of our control, but what can we focus on? So, I've had families who have kind of done, moved in another direction in terms of taking on different sports, um, looked at online learning as an opportunity to look at, I guess it's different methods of their kids learning, which is not to say this hasn't been difficult. It's been tremendously difficult on families. I think Cynthia, you mentioned too, like working from home, raising a family, the demands are huge on folks. But I think the important message is we just have to do the best that we can, and not to put so much pressure on ourselves to get it perfect, because we're really the first generation to ever kind of go through this. So, the resilience piece for me is what I've been focusing on. I'm not like, I'm an optimist, but I'm not being like super poly positive about this, but I really feel like this is an opportunity for this generation of kids to learn some resilience skills. This is a really tough situation, and we have to show them that there is a way through this, and that when we come out the other side, we're going to have possibly a whole different set of skills that will last a lifetime.
Lori, one of the things that I've noticed is that because of the pandemic, on some level, life has slowed down. And I think that an important piece of it is to notice that maybe we were so busy before, and kids were in this event and that event, and they were so busy that there wasn't time to really pause for kids or for parents. And I think and I could be wrong, but I think part of the resilience piece is really being in touch with how I'm feeling. And when you're busy, it's really hard to do that. So I'm thinking that it's almost like the pendulum has gone from busy to,
right,
what are we doing? And then how do we bring the kids kind of to the center point where, and parents, so that it's like, okay, we have a very different lifestyle. So we're not as busy, but we still want to do things as a family. We still want to have adventures and experiences. So on some level, it really calls forth creativity on the parents' part and the kids' part. Because I know I have a grandson who is, he's 10, and honest to goodness, when they were not at school, every day he would wake up and he'd have a different idea of something to make. One day it was slime all day long. I luckily I could go to the dollar store, and I think I bought 10 jars of shaving cream. And so slime all day long. And then the next day it was something else. So I think it's important for parents to encourage kids to be creative.
Right. Yeah.
And
definitely.
Have stuff available.
Right. Oh, for sure. There is that creativity piece, and exposing them to new things. And one of the things which was a positive outcome too is, learning new board games or learning new skills. I've even had parent or children teaching parent skills. Several parents learned how to play, is it Twitch, I think is the game. So play Twitch or Fortnite, and playing video games where they had never played those before. Kids going into the garage with dad or mom and working on things. All of the summer projects, I saw lots and lots of kids helping around the house, learning how to use drills and that sort of thing where they hadn't. So we did have to kind of become creative, and some of those things that maybe just we fell away from because we got, like you said, Chris, so organized, the sports and the activities outside the home. There were things rediscovered inside of the home. One point I would like to make though is I did have some stress from parents who were feeling, especially with social media or some of the other, even word of mouth, hearing how some parents were really getting it right. They were spending all day doing things with their kids and activities, and they were feeling that parental guilt because they were working and they were tired, and they had all of these other extraneous stressors on them, and they couldn't join in on that level of parenting. So that's where I kind of get into that forgiveness piece about it's okay, we do the best that we can, we add some positive things, but we don't have to get on that comparison meter about what's going on in someone else's house versus what's going on in ours. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great point, Lori, because I think part of the consideration, and you would know this better than anyone, is the different personalities of the kids as well.
Mhm.
So as much as my 10-year-old grandson would get up and be creative every day, his
Mhm.
sister would be doing something totally different. She was
Right.
actually doing schoolwork. He would not do schoolwork. She was doing schoolwork.
That's right.
So, my daughter had to figure out, okay, how do I support these two different ways of
Mhm.
being
Sure.
without saying, well, you have to do your schoolwork,
Mhm.
because like it wasn't going to get done. But he was being very creative. So I think it's important for
Mhm.
parents to realize that, maybe those parents that they were doing it right,
Mhm.
so to speak,
Right.
the kids just had different personalities and the
Sure.
parents had different
Mhm.
personalities. And
Oh, for sure.
so what's right, as you say, for one family isn't necessarily right for the next family at all.
Right. Sure. And certainly if you're a parent working outside of the home during this and you didn't stay, you weren't working remotely, but you were going out, life was as usual, except adding that your child is now at home. So, um, so I just think that all families are walking through this differently. We're all walking it through. Um, but finding what works for your family and, keeping people healthy and safe is what was really important, and really trying to focus on your immediate, family and kids.
And I think that um, looking for support is really important,
Mhm. Yeah,
because especially now it's difficult.
it
You know,
is.
my niece has a little guy and she's working from home, and he's crawling and he's climbing and he's pulling things out of the socket, like even
Mhm.
the safety things. It's like, oh my God. So
Mhm.
where can parents find support if they're
Mhm.
in a situation where they really don't have family around? Like, what kinds of
Mhm.
things can they do to get support?
Do you mean support with respect to daycare or support with respect
Well,
to?
I'm thinking it could be daycare. Maybe it's
Mm,
just reaching out to another parent by
mhm.
phone, maybe
Sure.
a group situation where moms and dads are talking about their struggles, or,
Right.
just.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a difficult question as well, because some of the things that existed just a few months ago are not operating in the same fashion that they do now.
Mm,
So I think a number of the local community resources are starting to try to start things up again. Via Zoom is a way that we can do, parent support. There are a couple of, and it depends on what type of support they're looking for. If you're looking for just a general, parent to parent, just try a social group or that sort of thing. It's kind of on parents to reach out to friends, if they, like you said, if they don't have family, but maybe coworkers, to try to develop a social support system for themselves. If it's something more complicated where they're having actually some struggles in the home, with behavior or maybe even mental health for themselves or others, there are certain community agencies, and I think Cynthia, maybe you can put them up later, that would deal specifically with those types of supports. And I'm thinking something like, the parents and family of, oh gosh, now I'm drawing a blank at the whole name of it. In any event, support for parents who are, struggling with their kids' mental health. So I'll grab that and give that to you, Cynthia, if you could put that up later. And I'll misspeak and put the wrong title on that.
And so could you talk a little bit more about resilience and maybe some tips for parents in terms of helping kids to be more resilient?
Mhm. Sure. So one of the things I find, and as a grandparent and parents, we find that it's difficult for us to watch our kids struggle. And, I'll speak from as a parent as well as a parent coach. It's really hard on the parent to watch their kids struggle and see them sad or upset. And so sometimes the natural inclination is to remove whatever that discomfort is and or to remove the barrier to make it an easier time of them. So then we see our kids happy again. And I think that's natural. We want to see our kids happy. But one of the downfalls of that, if we do that too frequently or in times when it's not really indicated or the best thing to do, kids learn not to have those barriers or work through those barriers. So what in the end happens is that they don't learn to stumble and fall and get back up again. That is a key skill for all of us, really, as adults. How many times you have to do something that you don't necessarily like, and you go through it and you get through it, and at the end of it, good for me, I did that. So there are little examples in our households every day when that occurs, where we can foster resilience in our kids. So a child perhaps who does not want to get on the bus to go to school. We'll talk. We've got lots of kids who don't want to go on the bus. It's scary. It can be pretty scary at first, especially with all those kids, even pre-COVID. So as a parent, we might fall into a bit of a trap where we say, oh, the kid's putting up a fuss and he really doesn't want to be on the bus. And to make the child feel better and in the brackets, us feel better, because it takes the discomfort away from us. That's always the secondary piece that we have to keep an eye on as a parent. So we drive them to school. So the message that we've given the child is kind of that, first of all, maybe I don't think you can do it either. So I'm going to get you to school. And that, yep, you're right, that was scary. I have to take you out of that situation and I'll drive you. And then that becomes a pattern where we remove those scary things. So resilience, and I'm just giving that as an example. Whereas if we instead really worked through it with the child and said, it is scary. This is your first time on the bus. Is there something I can do to help? Maybe start with a bus buddy or something like that, where we put things in place. We teach the child to kind of walk through that, and they don't have to like it at first, but then they learn that real resilience piece of, what, it was hard for me, but I can do it. I did it. And they learn that just because something is scary doesn't mean you can't cope or that you can't get through things. Does that kind of answer it?
Yeah, it does.
I like that. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost the metaphor that comes to my mind is that, as kids are growing up, as parents, where we protect them physically, and we don't want them to get sick and protect them, but they need to be exposed to germs and bacteria, so they build their immune system. And I think it's similar to emotional. It's like building an emotionally strong immune system, not to shut down emotions, but so that they know how to use their emotions appropriately. And sometimes they are really in tough situations and the parent needs to intervene, but other times it's like, okay, what can they learn from this situation? How can they become stronger and resilient in the situation?
And, I think of another example where it's something where, say, something doesn't go the way the child wanted, whether they didn't make a team that they were trying out for, or they didn't get invited to a birthday party. I mean, as parents, we feel those disappointments as well as they do. And we're with them on that. And so there's a real inclination to, call the coach and say, well, what happened? Why didn't he make? Or call the parents and why was my child left out? And I mean, I'm not going to say that that's never appropriate, but if you have to walk the child through that situation anyway. So let's look at the disappointed of not making a team. That is disappointing. We have to learn to accept those feelings of disappointment and yet brush yourself up or off and either find something out or work harder, work more targeted if it's something you still want to do in the future. And that to me is, a real piece of resilience that kind of That goes across the spectrum. And like I said, in so many day-to-day things, when kids fail, it's that growth mindset you hear a lot about in the
Yep.
schools right now,
Yep.
is that we learn from our failures, and it does really foster resilience.
Great. John, did you have a question?
Well, it's changing the subject a lot, Lori, but
Okay.
I deal with couples, and often nowadays, I think my wife and I were talking maybe almost 50%, but often they're in second relationships.
Mhm.
And so there's a blended family and kids of different ages, sometimes older, but sometimes they're with the new couple. And that can be problematic. So any advice for parents or step parents
Mhm.
in those situations?
Oh, sure. That is,
Yeah,
well, it's an innately a difficult situation. So
absolutely.
we
Talk
just
about
go into it.
resilience. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we go into it knowing that there will be challenges, not necessarily with that negative mindset that this is going to be so hard, but rather that, yes, it might get hard. And we are going to face challenges, as any family would, but challenges that are unique to blended families.
Yeah.
So, when, Chris, you talked about earlier, all the different temperaments and all the different personalities that come into play. So now you have two families coming together from. So I think that we have to be really deliberate in the parenting. We just can't get together and just assume that, we'll figure it out as we go. I suppose that's one strategy, but I think being deliberate about it and having a plan about when things go sideways, how are we going to deal with this? And communication is the huge piece. I talk to parents a lot about having a parenting plan, because I don't think it's something we should always be winging. Certainly we have to wing a lot of it. But so that parents have something in mind. Say, for example, one of the children needs to be disciplined. Something comes up and there needs to be discipline. Who's going to deal with primary discipline? Are we going to work at it, cooperatively? Are we going to, most importantly, sit down ahead of time and talk about our strategies and how we think about the issue? Because communication is key all of the time with parents to make sure they're on the same page, even more so in a blended family.
Yeah.
So although I don't think I gave you any specific examples, it always comes down to, for me, a parenting plan for things that you can foresee, and for the unforeseeable ones, take that time away. If you have to deal with something, take the time away, go talk about it, and then come back with how you're going to respond.
Yeah, what I heard you say for me was, it's better to have a plan ahead of time. But if a situation arises, either step back and then have the conversation, the communication, or if one of you has to act, then maybe again step back later and say, well, is that helpful? And for me, a great saying is, it's not what you possess, it's how you use it. It's not what you possess, it's how you use it. And I always use the example of Terry Fox. A young kid loses a leg to cancer and decides to run across Canada. Another young kid loses a leg to cancer, and poor me, life sucks. They both possess the same thing, use it quite differently. So he couldn't do anything about the cancer, the loss of the leg. And same with a family, whether it's a blended family or just, or you and me, or right now, we can't change anything that's happened up to this point. But what we decide to do from here forward, we have more choice over. And I think that's where, if couples can communicate and sort of have a goal or have a plan of where they want to go with their kids. Now there might be, roadblocks and detours along the way, but at least they have an idea of where they're going. It's like, if I want to go to Toronto, I can go up Highway 2 or 3 or back roads or 401, but at least I know where I'm going. And if you're in Windsor, there's going to be a few roadblocks. So you have to learn to go on the back streets, but you know where you're going, and you'll have a better chance of getting there if you. And so I think the same with parents in a blended family. If they, like you said, if they have an idea or have talked about anyway, how are we going to do this parenting? Because it is it's tough.
It is. It's a tough situation. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead. Finish with John, and then I'm going to pass on to Cynthia.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think some of the most challenging, situations can come from a blended family because we are dealing with so many different families of origin, or, there are just so many different things coming together. But I like what you said, John. It's the goal. It is that setting that goal. Where do we want to be? What type of parents do we want to do and be? And how are we going to handle these situations? Because we usually go into it knowing that, someone, this child, and if they're two, they don't get along with those, or this is an issue for me, or that type of parenting will not fly in my house. These things, we do have some awareness of those. So rather than just kind of wing it and deal with them as they come along, talk about them openly and have a plan.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura.
Okay.
Cynthia.
Yeah, piggybacking kind of on that topic that that John and Lori were talking about. I mean, the challenges with communication and the importance of having a plan, but oftentimes, especially now with things being a little bit more heightened and, tougher on all of us with our jobs or different things, even in our household. With my husband being a teacher and myself being a business owner, we also have children who we've decided to put into the school setting right now. But when you're on a different page, and a lot of homes have that situation where they may be on a different page when it comes to parenting, that what's being communicated to the kids, it's maybe hard for them to see the difference, right? Or they know, ask mom for this or ask dad for that. They can play you on it, right? So I'm sure you see a lot of that. But one thing I wanted to talk about was the anxieties. Are you seeing a lot more increased anxiety because of this? I mean, it heightening because of all of the challenges we're facing.
Right. The short answer is yes. The short answer I would say is yes. But I feel like childhood anxiety and has been on the rise. And I mean, and again, we can fall back to the resilience piece. We can fall back to the experiences, because I always, for me, I feel like anxiety, the root of it is that uncertainty, and then feeling like I'm not going to know what to do when it hits me, or whatever that uncertainty is. I don't have the skills, I don't have the confidence in myself to deal with it. So again, the schools are dealing with it with the mindfulness is in the curriculum quite a lot now. Even in kindergarten, we're starting with mindfulness, which is excellent. So it's really starting to address that piece of it, and having kids incorporate that into their day. And then just also the way I feel like dealing with parents, when I'm working with parents, is helping parents to frame things for their kids, or have them think about situations in a certain way that fosters less anxiety and more confidence in kids. So it comes down to skill building and problem solving. I do feel like there are lots of things that parents can do to help their kids deal with these the expression, these uncertain times. Well, it's uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen. But there are things we can do for kids in this, and when they're anxious, we can say, I don't know, if we don't know, because just trying to give that false sense of reassurance to kids just to make them feel better in the moment doesn't foster that skill of dealing with uncertainty. So saying, I don't know, but what I do know is we're doing the best in our family to keep you safe. Your teachers are keeping you safe. The doctors are working really hard. So what I do know is these are the things we can do to keep us safe. So being really careful that kids kind of don't keep going into that anxious line of thinking. And parents are anxious about a situation, whether it's COVID or anything else. That anxiety they can feel it. Kids can feel it and possibly pick it up. So if you're feeling anxious about a situation, perhaps take yourself out of it for a little bit, do some mindfulness, do some breathing, or whatever your coping strategies are so that you can help your child with it. There are so many resources on how to coach kids and how to help them see a situation in such a way where they can work through the anxiety. As I always say, the cure for anxiety is walking through it. So, swimming right through and getting to the other side.
What
So
would some of
there-
those resources be, Laura? You said
Oh.
there's lots of resources.
Well, there's one that I refer to a lot is there's an Oreen Wagner, the Worry Hill, riding up and down the Worry Hill. That is one that we deal with a lot. So teaching kids to really, endure that worry or that concern, that anxiety until you get to the top, and then it kind of comes down. So I always use the analogy of like waiting in line at a roller coaster. I love roller coasters. I genuinely love them. I can't stand the wait to get on them. That is the part that kills me. So if I can actually get myself in line, so that anticipatory anxiety that just really creeps up until we actually get on the ride, then I'm on and I just come down. And afterwards, I'm so proud of myself that I did it, And certainly anxiety there's a function for it. It's to keep us safe, to activate us, to get us to move forward. But it's when it gets to an unhealthy level, and then it stops us from enjoying our day or stops our kids from enjoying outside activities and doing things that are good for them, that it becomes problematic. And, if there are things parents have tried and they really have tried everything that they can do within the house, then it's important to seek professional help after that. But does that answer your question, Cynthia?
It's a start. Yeah, thanks.
Kind of went around and around there, but
That's okay.
Rosemary, you have a question?
Yes, actually I do, Lori. Lori, you had mentioned mindfulness, and what came to mind was journaling. And I know on a previous show, probably on a few shows, Crystal has addressed that with children doing journaling. Can you maybe speak to that?
Well, there are a number of, the grateful journals that kids can use. I can't say that I can put my finger on any specific journal resources, but I think that it's an excellent skill for some children. Some kids don't love to write, so they wouldn't necessarily write in a journal, but identifying feelings, whether they draw pictures, they can do art,
Yes.
journaling, whatever it is about their feelings. And for some kids, I've even had some teenagers who do a much better job of writing all of that stuff down and then handing it to their parents. It takes that face-to-face away, and we say, that shoulder to shoulder is better than face-to-face sometimes. And some kids might even, they will text these things to their parents about how they're feeling and about their day. I think journaling is excellent for anyone.
Yes.
But kids aren't necessary. I don't see a whole lot of it, to be honest with you. But feeling something short and brief, like the feelings journals, I think that would be beneficial for sure.
I just thinking during these times is for a way for kids, but you said, which was really interesting, is that they express it through maybe art or a drawing or something like that, but just to get those feelings out on a page and maybe have that tool available to them. And then the other thing I was going to ask you about is kids while they're in the school setting, and this is just from speaking to one of my niece in New York. So her son, my nephew, Benjamin is 10, and I asked her, how is he coping with the whole this whole pandemic? So he's now back to school at 4 days. There were 2 days in class, 3 at home, and the interesting thing was, she said, he doesn't mind wearing the mask at all. It's not even an issue. What was difficult was not being able to interact closely with friends in the schoolyard, or even during lunch hour. It's like they're at their desk and that's where they need to stay, or at the lunch table, but they were not able to interact. Is there any advice you could give actually to children or parents how to address that part. Because I have to think it's got to be difficult for kids to process that at a young age,
Oh,
why
for
they
sure.
can't be close contact.
Right. And I think you, my opinion would be just as you said, is just to address it. We can say, we don't like this. I don't like it. It's awful. It's too bad. It's whatever you want to say that, that acknowledges that, yeah, this is not optimal. This is not ideal. This isn't the way it was. So having those conversations, being super open, let them ask questions, and then trying to create opportunities where they can. So they might not be able to do the things in the schools. And hey, I have a lot of teachers who are friends. They feel horrible.
Yeah.
Or friends that are teachers, they feel terrible that they're constantly saying to the kids, okay, stand back, don't touch, don't play. It's not the natural order of things.
No.
So if there's an opportunity to create those things outside of the school, so going to parks, making sure you're following the health guide, the public health guidelines, so creating some opportunities outside of that. But I think the key is acknowledging it and saying, you have the right to be upset about this. You have the right, this is hard for you, but it's hard for you, but we can handle this.
Yeah, that's the key.
That's really good, Laurie.
That's the key.
Yeah.
How about for new parents, Laurie? What advice would you give for a new parent just starting out, before the kid pops out?
Do you mean with respect to COVID, or do you mean
No, just
in
respect to
general?
parenting.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was thinking about this.
The only reason I say that,
Yeah.
because I do some pre-marriage work, and for me,
Yes.
I really like it because it's like upriver prevention rather than downriver cleanup.
Oh, for sure.
5, 10, 15 years later, I get them when the wheels have fallen off, but I much prefer talking to people before they get married, if I can give them some clues or helps or tips or whatever,
Right.
so that they can incorporate those, and so the same, I'm assuming the same would be true for
Parenting. Yes.
There's a picture of me with my firstborn. Honest to God, I look like I'm scared to death. Like it was a cesarean birth. We were in Africa, and my friend took the baby from the child, and she goes to give him to me. And my look on my face is like, I'm terrified. I don't know what is this. Anyway, that's me. So I might have done one of your classes beforehand. I probably would have appreciated it.
Yes, for sure. Well, I hear you, John. I remember sitting at 4 o'clock in the morning after my firstborn came home, and I had her in my arms, and I called my friend who also had a maybe 2 or 3 month old at the time. And I literally said to her on the phone, I can't believe they let me take her home. I don't know what I'm doing. And I was totally panicked. I said, I have no clue what I'm doing. And I was right.
Yeah.
But no, that's not true. We do have some instincts. So what I was thinking earlier too is that something my mom told me, the advice that you get from friends and family and experts and books and now social media, there's all sorts of information out there. There's so much information out there. And when I come in contact with people with young families or new, and I say, consider your sources, right? So find someone you respect and take all this information in and make sure your parenting plan or the things that you try are in line with your values and your beliefs and the type of family you want to raise. So, one of my old aunts told me to, she gave me some, I won't say what the advice was. Actually, anyway, I just looked at it and thanked her and I said, thank you very much. But I didn't incorporate that in my parenting plan or in my strategies. It just didn't fit for me. So I went to look how to deal with that situation with something that fit and was a little bit more evidence-based, so to speak. And the one that I did, I always tell parents now too, this is just a little tiny thing, is sleep when the baby naps. Make sure you sleep. Because my mother told me that and I didn't. And then I tell people that now and they don't. And I know they don't.
As a grandparent, I do. When
Yeah,
baby naps, I nap. No doubt about it.
Yeah. And I think even through all of COVID, and there are 2 points I want to make, John, that you brought up. One is that parents really need to take care of themselves as people and as in a relationship. If you are co-parenting, if you have a partner in the home with you, taking care of that relationship as well, and taking care of yourself as a parent. The old saying about you can't give if there's nothing in, if you're not filling up your own buckets, you can't give of yourself. So there's that piece. And then the other part is, we talked earlier at the very beginning about not having a manual. Well, there really isn't, because your own family's values, your beliefs, how you went to, that has to be yours. So early on, I took parenting classes. I went to different groups where I could try to learn as much as I could to see what would fit into my family and my values. And it's a lot easier, John, like you said about, getting it when 15 years later, when the wheels are off the bus. If you kind of adapt your parenting to the developmental stages that the kids are going through as you go along, then, I get fewer phone calls, with a 15-year-old or 16-year-old that doesn't have problem solving skills. If you've been using collaborative problem solving as a parenting skill, kind of as it goes along. Yeah. So I guess that would be my advice, is to inform yourself about what's out there and kind of adapt your parenting for the developmental stage. And that requires knowing what stages the kids are in, like what is appropriate for this age, what can I expect? Right. And then not just, saying, oh, it's just a phase. Yep, kids have all sorts of phases, but it doesn't mean we don't address those things so that we can get them to walk through that phase and come out the other side with the skills they need to go to the next phase.
Yeah, if you know, Lori,
have there been any books that you, sorry, go ahead, Cynthia.
I was just going to say, it was really interesting, going back to the manual, conversation, just pops in my head because, we have a 6-year-old boy, 11-year-old girl, and a 16-year-old boy. So in our house, we have a lot of different ages and stages. But not only that, in everybody's house, it's the same, and they all have their own personalities. So it's almost like each child should come with their own manual. So going back to what John was saying, advice for those who are expecting a child, just expect the unexpected, because you never know what you're going to get. I mean, our third, he broke the mold, right? Like he's, so I find myself, the beauty of it is I do have Lori as a resource. I've phoned Lori on different occasions, and it's really important as a parent to know that it's okay to ask for help and when we need to ask for help, because there are times where the resources we may have, the books and the things that we can read, it's great, or our friends and our family to ask questions, it's good too, but it comes from a bias point where somebody like Lori, I find a lot of comfort and the advice that you have given in the different situations we've had, so when would you suggest it's important for a parent to get in touch with you?
Well, I think that there are a few situations. One, there are lots of folks who just want to try new things. They just want to learn as much as they can. They want their child to meet their potential. So they might get in touch with me for that sort of thing, just to learn new strategies. So it might not be something problem-based. There might not be any crises going on. It's just kind of, I want to learn and I'd like to do the best that I can. So that is a situation where it's not, like I said, not necessarily crisis. There are other times when there's a problem behavior in the home and it seems like you've tried this, you've read about it, and everything you kind of throw at it just doesn't seem to address the problem. Sometimes it's something as simple as, a parent will say, I can't get my kids to help around the house or do their homework or get off screens without a huge, a blow up, asking kids to get off screens, or how do I can't seem to implement a screen strategy in my home and get it to work. So when you've tried a lot of things and whatever you try, you just see the hamster wheel, you keep doing the same thing. That might be a time too. And lots of times it's might be the same strategies you're using, but we're missing just one element and we have to tweak it just a bit. And that can be, the turning point. And also I've had folks who maybe their family of origin, they would like to change up their parenting. They don't really, the parenting that they felt that they experienced wasn't a way that they would like to move forward with their parenting. So looking at different ways to parent. Certainly with my situation, I had a very close relationship with my mom. I took lots and lots of things that she did. But she parented in the 50s and 60s. So, and the world changes around us. So we have to adapt. So there were some things she did that I did not incorporate into my parenting plan and my strategy.
Can you talk to that screen time thing a bit?
Mm-hmm.
How do you coach parents on screen time?
Well, that is, that's in the last, I'd have to say 5 years is just probably, it used to be in the top 10. It's number one right now, really, the screen time and the digital dependence and overuse. So how do I coach? Well, again, I'm going to say it's very deliberate. We can't just allow technology in our homes without a plan around it because it's sneaky, it's attractive. And I don't think as parents we can compete with the attractiveness of it. And I often say it's like putting a bowl of candy in front of a toddler and expecting them not to eat it when you walk away. It's so attractive. It's attractive to kids, it's attractive to teens, and it's attractive to us, right? So having a real family discussion about what does technology look like in our home? How will we use it? There are lots of positives about having technology. Certainly this online learning has been, and Zoom has been a lifesaver for lots of people. There is a resource, I think, Cynthia, you have put it up there that I send parents to. It's called screenagersmovie.com, and it is a movie. However, the site, if you go to the site, there's a Tech Talk Tuesdays, and I love this. They give parents conversation starters so that every Tuesday there's a, whether it's around dinner or whatever, there's a real deliberate conversation with kids about, how do you feel about this? And it's always starting off with a positive because we don't want to turn kids off, or if you start with, you need to turn off that Xbox or you play too much. And kids these days, those conversations don't typically go well or last long. They're usually pretty one-sided.
Yeah.
So really having that really rich conversation with families and kids and getting their input and getting them to start that critical thinking piece, because let's face it, they leave our house, they're going to be doing their own thinking. We need to teach them that critical thinking, and that's true of the technology. So specific strategies, sometimes we use contracts, sometimes we use scheduling. We're really clear about the limits and the family rules and have the kids be involved in setting those family rules and those limits. Getting their input is key. Just coming down with a hammer and saying, this is the way it's going to be in the family, you get 2 hours and this time, it's not terribly helpful. Certainly parents drive the bus, you have the last say, but getting their input really does help with teaching them skills they need and getting them to comply with what you come up with.
Thanks, Laura. That's great.
When our kids were young, we would have a family meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it was every week, sometimes it was every couple of weeks, but it was really interesting to hear them and give them the time to talk about things that were coming up that we had to do, or family situations, or planning a vacation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one of the things that we did is we had like a talking whatever. So a talking mouse, we wouldn't do that. It'd be like a talking feather, a talking stone. And whoever had it, they had the floor, and none of us could talk while that person was talking.
Right.
And it was great because you probably won't believe this, but my tendency would be just to talk and not give them time to talk.
Hard to believe that.
So when the kids had the stone, even if they didn't want to say anything, they could just hold the stone. They had the floor. And what it did is I think they felt like they were part of the family. They were part of the decision making. Their input was important. As you say, Lori, the parents are still the final say, but if things would come up, we would hear their perspective when sometimes we might not take the time to hear it. So for me, family meetings are really important. I really like that. I'm going to have a look at that Screenagers movie.
It's really good.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
The other thing it did for me was we did that so that the kids would learn to listen.
Mhm.
And what it taught us was it taught us to listen to them.
I
That's
knew
what really
you were
taught
going
us.
to say that. I
Okay.
knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
The number one complaint from kids is that my parents don't listen.
Yes.
And sometimes they're right.
Yeah,
So yeah, it
absolutely.
is. Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, family meetings, love them, huge. However they look like in your family, I'm a huge proponent for them. Yeah.
The other comment I wanted to make, Lori, is that last week when we had Harville and Helen on, they talked about really the evolution of our understanding of relationships, as well as the research on relationships and neuroplasticity.
Mhm.
And I think we need to look at that too in terms of parenting, that,
Mhm.
I grew up in the 50s. My parents parented very differently, but the understanding of human nature and how we develop, people didn't have access to that information back then. Now we have so much information.
Yeah.
And I think it is important for parents to understand what kids are going through. Kids are much more, I think kids are much more vocal and express themselves more than in the 50s, we were like,
Nothing.
like if there were adults around, like no talking. So, but kids now are very comfortable in conversation. And so the challenges are very different, I think.
Mhm.
And I think as parents and grandparents, if we understand the developmental phases
Mhm.
and how we learn, I think it's just easier then to interact with the kids.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Lori, you were awesome. We just love everything that you talked to us about today, your expertise, sharing such valuable information, especially in these unprecedented times.
Mhm.
We're going to move along. I'm going to switch over to Cynthia. We
Okay.
each show we do a giveaway. So I'm going to
Okay.
just have Cynthia. Did you want to pipe in, and then we'll get to it?
Okay.
Yeah, so you know what, we could obviously sit here and talk for hours about this, because I mean the conversations are endless and experiences and all that stuff. So thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us. I know that when we were talking about the giveaway, that you had an amazing giveaway in a way that maybe they can make it into a family meeting, or this could just be something for fun. Did you want to tell us a little bit more about your giveaway, Lori?
Sure. So yes, one of the things that I really, I didn't really touch on it today, but the relationship building, spending time as a family is so key. I know we're spending lots of time together because we're stuck in the house, but that quality time. So the giveaway is there is a restaurant, cafe in Windsor called Bad Witch and Wizard Bakery. And so it'll be a $25 gift certificate for the family to, they serve ice cream with cheesecake. And when this COVID passes, they do have board games there. You can take the family for sandwiches and have a nice outing as a family or grandparents.
That's wonderful.
What's it called again?
It's called Bad Witch and Wizards Bakery. It was previously the Wizards of Walkerville, so it's kind of combined now. It still is the same owner, but it's just combined.
That's awesome. Oh, and the
Rosemary.
lucky Rosemary Roach is the lucky winner. So that's wonderful. Rose, you're on the show. You're a lucky winner today. Rose and her husband own Sissy and Roche out in Kingsville. They do art classes and cooking classes, all kinds of great things. So a great place to bring the family out to, actually, as well. I love that idea. And I was just going to quickly comment on that is, Lori, I love your giveaway because it's so relevant, is families doing things together. And maybe that's a way to get kids away from the computer.
Right.
We're all guilty of it, right?
Right.
But planning family activities. We had Teesons on a few weeks back, and you know, that's a great family annual little outing. Pick the apples, do the hay
Right.
the hay rides that we call them. I forgot what they're called now.
Yeah.
Going blank as always. Anyways,
Yeah.
but fun things to do. I think that's important, right? And
It is.
and we're in a situation maybe where we're more apt to do it because parents are at home, not maybe by choice, but because of work situations.
Right.
But you were wonderful. Did any of my hosts, any hosts wish to add anything to Lori, or Lori, would you like to add anything? We have a couple minutes left.
It didn't come up, and it's not that it's not important, but just the positive aspect of our, and really spending that time, that relationship building, praising your children. Remember when they were little and everything was good job, well done. When they're teens and preteens, really looking for those opportunities to say, good job, I appreciate your help, and the positive aspect of the parenting to really foster that relationship, as we talked about earlier.
Thank you, Lori.
And I think that it would be really great for you to come back and talk about grandparenting.
I love that. I don't want, please not as a grandparent yet, okay? I love that. I'd love to come back.
Just put some boundaries around the grandparent.
Yes, I love that. I would. We have a couple of.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So I just want to mention that Cynthia has, thank you, Cynthia. She's posted into the comment section the links in which you can get in touch with Lori if you would like to set up, you know, an appointment with her and other resources as well. If you, as well, please do share this show with your friends. We appreciate you coming on. If you're doing a replay, please do a watch party with it. There's such valuable, like I can't say it enough, information that I think a lot of parents can use today. These are, like I said, these are not times anybody has experienced, and they're difficult times. But when we have professionals such as Lori on the show to share their expertise and the resources, as well, Crystal and John, who are also counselors. So please, you know, reach out, whether you're a parent, a child, maybe your child needs it. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because we are fortunate enough to have the resources. Probably years ago, maybe those resources weren't that readily available, but they are today. Lori, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
I don't know if we have any, just before I wrap, any comments from the audience or questions from anybody. We thank you for being on the show, like joining us today.
It was very fun.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our viewers for either joining us live or catching us on replay. We greatly appreciate it. So thank you, everybody. And if there's no comments or questions, thank you.
I'd like to just reinforce that the positive thing. I think you're right on the button there, Lori. And last week, and I want to go back and re-listen to it again. But Harville and Helen talked about the only thing we have in our head are memories and imagination. And so if we're positive with our child and then they leave, that's their memory. And they come back in, they expect positive. But if we're negative, they come back in and that's in their memory, so they expect negative. I think that's what they were getting at. I want to re-listen to it again, but I agree with you 100% about the positive. And certainly in relationships, I really encourage couples to appreciate each other and to say that stuff out loud, because it reprograms it. You know, our old brain is hearing positives rather than negatives. I think it's really important.
Very much so. Great.
Yeah, it was nice actually time to have you, Lori, on this week, like following up with Harville and Helen last week. And it is so it's so interesting how everything goes back to childhood, right? So those childhood memories, those childhood experiences, how they affect our adult years and that. So it's important for parents, you know, like there are no manuals, but there are experts out there that you can obviously reach out to. Okay, well, I want to say thank you to our guest speaker, but also to my wonderful hosts for your great questions and that for moderating today. And thank you again to everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you here next week again. Thank you and have a wonderful and safe week. Take
Thank you,
care.
Rosemary.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Thanks. Bye, Lori. Thank you.
Bye-bye.